When you hear the name Stephen A. Smith, you stop. Not because he's loud, though, let's be honest, he is. Not because of the booming New York accent or the way he slices through sports arguments like a hot knife through butter. No, you pause because Stephen A. Smith isn't just a sports analyst. He's a cultural force, a walking headline, a man who turned hot takes into high art. But behind the sharp suits, the ESPN spotlight, and the fiery monologues on First Take, there's another story, one you didn't see on your screen. One that starts far from fame and fortune, deep in the heart of the Bronx. How does a kid from the streets of New York become the most powerful voice in American sports media? What drives a man to walk away from a $90 million offer just to prove his worth? Let's rewind. Before the fame, before the camera-ready charisma. This journey started with pain, family, and a relentless hunger to rise. Born October 14, 1967, Stephen Anthony Smith came into the world in the Bronx, a borough known more for its grit than its glory. His parents, both from the U.S. Virgin Islands, brought with them the fire of the Caribbean, sun-soaked resilience, and a bone-deep belief in survival. Stephen was the fifth of 6 children, 4 older sisters, and a younger brother, Basil, a name that would later echo in his heart as both memory and mourning. His dad, Mr. Smith Sr., owned a modest hardware store. He was reserved, old school, a quiet man who believed in doing the work, keeping your head down, and letting actions speak. But his silence often felt like distance. On the flip side was Janet Smith, Stephen's mother, and the true engine of the household. Small in stature, massive in presence. She didn't believe in handouts or pity. Her mantra, no one owes you a thing. You want it? Go earn it. She saw in Stephen something no one else did, a fire that needed focus. When she died in 2017, Stephen didn't just lose his mother, he lost the person who knew his soul best. Stephen was raised in Hollis, Queens, a neighborhood buzzing with hip-hop, street dreams, and harsh realities. It was a place where hope had to fight to breathe. There, basketball wasn't just a game, it was a lifeline, his sanctuary. He'd spend hours dribbling on chipped pavement, launching shots at bent rims, imagining a future far from where he stood. And like any great story worth telling, it wasn't all smooth. There were setbacks, heartbreaks, losses that would shape him more than any championship win ever could. But it's that very struggle, the journey from cracked courts in Queens to the executive offices of ESPN, that makes Stephen A. Smith not just unforgettable, but irreplaceable. So what is it that makes him so magnetic, so polarizing, so necessary? Why do millions tune in not just to watch sports, but to hear what he thinks about them? Let's pull back the curtain and dive deeper into the rise, the roar, and the real story behind Stephen A. Smith.
Basketball wasn't just a game for Stephen A. Smith. It was his training ground. It's where he learned how to compete, how to handle losses, and most of all, how to speak up. Sure, he wasn't the most gifted player. Standing at 6'1", he didn't exactly dominate the court, but you'd never miss him. Why? Because he was always talking, calling out plays, questioning coaching decisions, arguing strategy, loud, passionate, and unfiltered. Sometimes that mouth even got him benched or tossed. But it was also a clue. His voice, full of energy, insight, and conviction, was more than noise. It was a preview of what was coming. After finishing at Thomas Edison High School in 1986, Stephen took a quick detour to the Fashion Institute of Technology. Yeah, fashion school. But he didn't stay long. Basketball was still his true obsession. Then came the shot he'd been waiting for. A scholarship to play at Winston-Salem State University, a historically black college in North Carolina. Under the wing of the legendary coach Clarence Big House Gaines, a man who'd sent dozens of young black athletes to the pros, Stephen believed he had finally made it. But the dream didn't last. A serious knee injury ended his hopes of going pro. And just like that, everything he had worked for on the court was gone. So what do you do when your dream dies? Stephen turned to a different outlet, his voice. Even before his injury, he had a reputation for telling it like it is. He once wrote for his school newspaper, the News Argus, suggesting that Coach Gaines, his own coach, should consider stepping down for health reasons. The backlash was instant. People were furious. But Stephen didn't back down, because even then, he knew something most people take years to learn. Truth has a cost, and if you're not willing to pay it, you don't deserve the mic. He graduated in 1991 with a degree in mass communications. No fanfare, no NBA contract, just a diploma and a deep fire in his gut. No one, not even Stephen himself, could have predicted that the kid who was too loud and too opinionated would one day be worth over $80 million and become a household name in sports media. But when Stephen A. looks back on those early years, he doesn't talk about money. He talks about Hollis, his mother Janet, and Basil, his younger brother who tragically died in a car crash in 1992. In a 2009 interview, Stephen said, "Every time I sit in front of a camera, I think of Basil. He never got to live the life I have, so I'm living it for both of us." When Stephen A. walked across the stage at Winston-Salem State, degree in hand, he didn't walk into stardom. He walked into the grind. There were no ESPN offers, no TV gigs, just a dream and a pen. He started small, real small, writing for local outlets like the Winston-Salem Journal, Greensboro News and Record, and eventually the New York Daily News. None of these jobs were glamorous, but they were the brick-by-brick foundation of everything to come. What set him apart? Simple. He didn't write like everyone else.
Stephen A. wrote like he was talking, firing off arguments, asking bold questions, pressing every point like it was Game 7. He didn't chase approval, he chased truth. And that made people take notice. Then came the big break. The Philadelphia Inquirer, one of the biggest newspapers on the East Coast. His beat, the NBA. More specifically, the Philadelphia 76ers. With his deep basketball IQ and fearless writing style, Stephen A. didn't just report games, he exploded off the page. He challenged coaches, critiqued players, said what others were too afraid to print. And readers, they couldn't get enough. That was the turning point. From a kid who lost his shot at the league to a writer who took on the league, Stephen A. Smith was just getting started. This is where the Stephen A. Smith brand truly started to take shape. But let's be honest, print journalism was never going to be big enough to contain him. With that unmistakable voice, rapid-fire delivery, and a debate style that feels like a high-speed collision, Stephen A. wasn't meant to live on the page. He was made for the screen. And in 2003, he stepped into the spotlight in a way that would change everything. That was the year Stephen A. officially joined ESPN, the biggest name in sports broadcasting. No more bylines in newspapers. Now he was talking directly to millions, live and unfiltered. The moment he looked into that camera, it was clear. This wasn't just another analyst. This was a voice, one that could shake locker rooms, headlines, and even the culture. He started as an NBA analyst on NBA Shoot-Around, later called NBA Countdown. But it didn't take long for viewers to notice the intensity, the passion, the way he never pulled punches. ESPN saw what the world was starting to realize. Stephen A. had something special. So they gave him his own show, quite frankly, with Stephen A. Smith. It ran from 2005 to 2007. It didn't become a ratings juggernaut, but it didn't need to be. It laid the foundation for something even bigger. In 2012, ESPN retooled First Take and brought in Stephen A. as the central spark, placing him across the table from another strong voice, Skip Bayless. It was lightning in a bottle. Two personalities, two egos, two minds that didn't just debate, they collided, and audiences couldn't look away. Stephen A. became the heartbeat of the show. Catchphrases like "stay off the weed" and "that's blasphemous" became instant memes and national punchlines. He wasn't just a sports analyst, he was a pop culture force, a showman, a television star. And the secret to it all? He doesn't just say his opinion, he performs it. He breaks it down, he builds it up. He laughs, he roasts, he rants, all with perfect timing. It's not chaos, it's precision. Years of sports knowledge fused with theatrical control. It's why he can keep that same intensity, show after show, year after year.
Whether it's the NBA, NFL, Super Bowl, World Series, or even the Olympics, when Stephen A. speaks, people listen, or argue, or meme it. Either way, they react. But television? That was just the beginning. Stephen A. wasn't content being the king of just one platform. He moved into radio, hard. From 2015 to 2019, he hosted his own SiriusXM show, earning a cool $1 million a year from that alone. And then came the podcast wave. His No Mercy podcast didn't just dominate sports rankings, it became a place where Stephen A. could flex on politics, culture, race, music, and whatever else was on his mind. Because for him, sports is just the door. The world beyond, that's where the real conversation starts. And don't think for a second he stopped there. He even took his talents to Hollywood. Whether it's his recurring role as Brick on General Hospital, a cameo in I Think I Love My Wife alongside Chris Rock, or his 2023 appearance in Creed 3, Stephen A. always leaves an impression. Just a few minutes on screen and you remember him, because that's what Stephen A. Smith is now, a media powerhouse. TV, radio, podcasts, film, and above all, presence. He's not just in the sports world, he's woven into the fabric of American culture. Off camera, Stephen A. Smith doesn't stay silent, and he never has. Beyond the debates and viral moments, he's consistently used his platform to speak on real issues: racial inequality, justice for black athletes, and the institutional problems baked into the sports world. He doesn't tiptoe around the tough topics, he charges straight in. So, when a 2024 poll by former GOP pollster John McLaughlin showed Stephen A. pulling 2% as a potential Democratic candidate for the 2028 presidential race, people raised their eyebrows. The headlines followed fast. Did he say he's running? No. Did he say he wouldn't? Also no. He said, "I'm just not satisfied with what I'm seeing." A cryptic but classic Stephen A. answer. The kind that makes you wonder, what if? It's been over 30 years since he left that small local newsroom, and today, Stephen A. Smith is one of the most influential voices in all of sports media, globally. He's gone from being scolded as a college journalist for overstepping to being a man whose words can shift public opinion, live on First Take, in real time, and through the controversy, the fame, the millions of eyeballs watching him daily, one personal belief has kept him steady. I can be wrong, I can be hated, but I will never shut up just because someone doesn't like what I have to say. To Stephen A., holding the mic means telling the truth, even when it's unpopular. That's the code. That's the brand. He never walked the path that was laid out for others. He carved his own, one line, one headline, one hot take at a time. And that path? It's taken him to the top. The Stephen A. you see on TV, he's not just a face on a panel. He's the CEO of himself, a walking media empire who built something massive with nothing more than a love for sports, a sharp mind, and a voice that simply couldn't be ignored. To the average viewer, he's the loudest guy in every debate. But if you look closer, you'll see something else: a master strategist, a business architect, and a brand that's worth tens of millions of dollars.
As of 2025, Stephen A. Smith's net worth is estimated at $85 million. Let that sink in. He's not just the highest paid sports commentator on TV, he's one of the highest paid voices in media. But none of it came easy. This empire wasn't handed to him, it was earned through bold moves, smart positioning, and a refusal to play it safe. When he first joined ESPN in the early 2000s, his paycheck wasn't making headlines. But by the time he returned to the network in 2014, after a short hiatus, it was clear. Stephen A. didn't just bring commentary, he brought eyeballs. He brought energy. He brought influence. ESPN knew it. So they cut a deal, $3 million per year. Big at the time, but not even close to what was coming. Then came the game changer. In 2019, ESPN locked him in with a blockbuster 5-year deal worth $60 million. That's $12 million per year, making him the highest paid on-air talent in the network's history. That would be the peak for most people, but not Stephen A. By 2024, everything shifted again. ESPN was going through major shakeups. Streaming platforms, Amazon Prime, Apple TV, Netflix, were starting to flex into sports. And suddenly, Stephen A. found himself in a very rare position. He had all the leverage. So when ESPN offered him a jaw-dropping $90 million contract, he shocked everyone and said no. Why? I've been the face of ESPN for 12 years. What's that worth? He wanted more than money. He wanted power, influence, and a louder voice, especially in NFL coverage where he felt underused despite the NFL being America's most watched sport. What gives someone the confidence to stare down a media giant and say that's not enough? It's simple. Brand power. Stephen A. Smith isn't just ESPN's face. He's bigger than the network now. His voice, his takes, his presence, they go beyond the studio. He's got radio, podcasting, acting credits, social media dominance, and influence in spaces ESPN doesn't even touch. He's not chasing opportunities anymore. He is the opportunity. Stephen A. Smith doesn't just dominate TV. He's a full-blown multimedia machine. We're talking multiple platforms, multiple income streams, and one of the sharpest business minds in the industry. Let's break it down. First stop, radio. Stephen A. has been a major voice on the airwaves since 2005. Whether it was ESPN Radio, Fox Sports Radio, or SiriusXM, he's had the mic, and people tuned in. From 2015 to 2019 alone, he was pulling in about $1 million a year from radio thanks to a loyal listener base that followed him no matter where he broadcast.
Then came the podcast boom. With no mercy, Stephen A. didn't just dip his toe into podcasting, he cannonballed in. And this time, he wasn't just talking sports. He tackled politics, pop culture, social issues, real-world conversations with the same fire he brings to First Take. The result? Millions of listeners per episode and top-tier rankings on platforms like Spotify and Apple Podcasts. The sponsorship deals followed, so did the money. But he didn't stop at audio. He went Hollywood. Small roles? Sure, but impactful. You've seen him in I Think I Love My Wife alongside Chris Rock, in Creed 3, and playing Brick on General Hospital. Each appearance helped grow the Stephen A. brand outside the ESPN bubble, bringing in new fans who may not even watch sports. Smart move? Very. And off-camera, he's a top-tier public speaker. Universities, Fortune 500 companies, major sports summits. Stephen A. commands high speaking fees, and people gladly pay them, not just because he's famous, but because he's authentic. A man who overcame dyslexia as a kid and climbed to the very top of sports media purely through will, voice, and brain power. He doesn't just give speeches, he delivers moments. Now let's talk business. Stephen A. may not be as flashy as NBA stars or rap moguls, but don't let that fool you. Behind the scenes, he's built a solid, intentional financial foundation. He owns a media production company focused on sports and culture, giving him full control over his own content and how it's distributed. In today's digital world, that's power. He's invested in real estate, which we'll get into next, but here's the thing. He's not reckless with money. Yes, the suits are sharp. The accessories? Top shelf. But Stephen A. plays the long game. I never put money into anything I don't understand, and I'm making sure my daughter's future is locked in before I splurge on anything. That's the mindset. Every dollar, it has a purpose. Stephen A. isn't just a man. He's a brand ecosystem. He earns from every angle: TV, radio, podcasts, endorsements, public speaking, writing, investments, real estate, even acting. But here's what matters most. He's done it all without compromising who he is. He still holds the same principles he did back when he was a young, hungry journalist at Winston-Salem State. To him, the money is a byproduct, not the purpose. What he's really built? A voice that can't be replaced.
a presence so undeniable that in a world constantly shifting, he stays essential. So when he turns down $90 million, then boldly asks for $25 million per year, people might raise their eyebrows. But he doesn't flinch. I know my value. I don't need anyone else to tell me. That's Stephen A. through and through. And if you're wondering what kind of guy turns that mindset into a lifestyle, look in his garage.
You won't see him flaunting exotic cars all over Instagram. He doesn't post speed tests or brag about the price tag. But make no mistake, Stephen A's garage is serious, powerful, elegant, understated, but built to turn heads, just like the man himself. Stephen A. Smith doesn't just drive luxury, he drives with intention. Every car in his collection is a reflection of who he is, sharp, strategic, and always in control. You won't find flashy Lamborghinis or wild custom Ferraris in his garage. He's not in it for the attention. He chooses vehicles the same way he chooses his words, carefully and with purpose. Instead of hyper-speed toys, Stephen A. opts for prestige, power, and presence, the kind of cars favored by CEOs, power brokers, and global icons, because those are the circles he moves in now. At the top of the lineup, a black Bentley Continental GT. This isn't a car that shouts, it speaks. With its handcrafted interior, roaring V8 engine, and sleek British design, it's the definition of quiet power. Not flashy, but unmistakable. Just like Stephen A. in a heated debate. He doesn't have to raise his voice to take over the room. Then there's the Mercedes-Benz S-Class, his go-to for long days and late nights. Think of it as a rolling sanctuary, calm, insulated, and incredibly smooth. In a career filled with pressure and non-stop noise, peace and focus start in the driver's seat. He's also been spotted behind the wheel of a BMW 7 Series, a perfect blend of German performance and executive-level comfort. It's not loud, it doesn't scream for attention, it just shows up and commands respect. The kind of ride built for professionals who move fast, think big, and never waste time. And when space matters, whether he's traveling with family, crew, or production equipment, the Cadillac Escalade becomes his ride of choice. Bold, roomy, all-American. It's the SUV for a man whose presence fills every room and every frame. So what ties these cars together? Not flash, not hype, but purpose, durability, and identity. Each vehicle aligns perfectly with Stephen A.'s lifestyle and values. High performance, professional polish, zero wasted motion. He's not out here flexing for Instagram likes. He's choosing tools that keep up with his grind and help him stay grounded. But the most powerful part of his car collection, it mirrors his brand. Luxurious, but never over the top. Strong, but not showy. Just like the man who built a career not by shouting, but by always knowing exactly what he stands for. And while Stephen A. is one of the loudest, most recognizable voices in all of sports media, there's one part of his life he keeps completely off limits: his family. Behind the takes, the headlines, and the spotlight, Stephen A. is deeply private. He almost never speaks publicly about relationships. He never posts photos of his kids. In social media, it's all business. His personal life is a no-fly zone. I chose this life. They didn't. It's my job to shield them. That's how he put it, and he means it. It wasn't until 2019 that the world even knew he had children. In a rare interview, Stephen revealed he has 2 daughters, born a year apart. No names, no photos, no red carpet appearances. Just 2 young women living quietly and protected, just the way he wants it. And yet, they're his why. He once said, "I don't just work for me anymore. I live for them."
According to close sources, their names are Samantha and Nyla. One is said to be passionate about acting and the arts. The other, social activism, ready to take on the world with the same fire as her father. Though they remain out of public view, their impact on him is profound. Stephen shared once that just a few soft words from his daughters could change his entire mindset, even reshape a major career decision. His silence isn't distance, it's protection. He's seen the ugly side of fame,
the online hate, the media invasions. He's watched friends, colleagues, even their children get torn apart by the spotlight. And he's made a promise. That will never be his daughters. And what about love? That's the question fans always ask when they catch that twinkle in his eye or that rare smile behind his black-rimmed glasses. Rumors once linked him to First Take co-host Molly Qerim. The two had undeniable chemistry on screen. Fiery debates, sharp wit, and subtle laughter between takes. But off-screen, he's said nothing. Because when it comes to love, just like his family, Stephen A. plays it close to the chest. There was always a bit of playful back and forth, lingering looks, teasing exchanges that had fans whispering about something more between Stephen A. Smith and First Take co-host Molly Qerim. The chemistry was undeniable. But in early 2025, Stephen A. addressed the rumors head-on. "Molly and I, we're good colleagues. That's it. Straightforward, no drama. Case closed." But just when the story seemed to end, he threw fans a curveball. On The Howard Stern Show later that same year, Stephen A. revealed, quietly, almost offhand, that he's in a serious relationship. No names, no photos, no red carpet sightings, just this. She's special, she's smart, she's strong, and most importantly, she understands me better than anyone else ever has. And that's all we got. He joked, "I'll go public if I ever get married." But everyone knew, it wasn't really a joke. That was Stephen's way of protecting something real, shielding it from the spotlight, the gossip, the clickbait headlines. Another part of Stephen A.'s life that rarely gets any airtime? His faith.
Born into a Christian family, he doesn't lead with religion. You won't see him quoting scripture in every segment or preaching on air. But when life hits hard, or when he talks about raising his daughters in a chaotic world, he'll bring up something deeper. "I'm not perfect, but I'm grateful I still believe in something good," he once said. For Stephen, faith isn't for show. It's personal. It's a compass. And like everything else he holds close, he keeps it guarded. To some, that silence might seem like a contradiction, but for a man who makes a living talking, knowing when not to speak, that's power. Stephen A. Smith isn't hiding. He's choosing. Choosing to protect what matters most: his family, his faith, and his peace. Behind the bold takes and booming voice is a man who values privacy. A man who understands that words can build or destroy. And sometimes, silence is the ultimate form of strength. Of course, Stephen A.'s career hasn't been spotless. He didn't rise to the top by avoiding controversy. He walked into it, head-on. In 2014, he found himself in the middle of one of his biggest public firestorms. It all started with a comment on First Take regarding the Ray Rice domestic violence case. Stephen suggested that women should sometimes consider how to prevent violence, remarks that were widely criticized as victim-blaming and insensitive. The backlash was fast and fierce. ESPN suspended him for a week. Social media lit up with demands for his firing. Stephen A. was in the crosshairs. But he didn't dodge. He didn't blame the network. He didn't send out a half-baked statement from PR. He showed up, looked right into the camera, and owned it. In a nearly 5-minute on-air apology, he admitted his words were wrong, apologized to anyone hurt by them, and clarified that he never intended to justify violence in any form. That moment didn't erase the mistake, but it showed something rare in the media world: accountability. Now, you'd think, after that, he might play it safe, dial it down a notch. But that's not Stephen A. He stayed bold, brash, unfiltered.
In a recent NFL broadcast, he stirred another national debate after suggesting that a white coach may struggle to fully understand the experiences of black players. Some said it was divisive. Others said it was the truth no one else would say aloud. Stephen A's response? I said what I believe, and I'll stand by it unless I'm proven wrong." Then in 2023, during coverage of the FIFA Women's World Cup, he cracked a sarcastic remark after a highlight. "After this, I need to turn on the NBA to wake up." It was meant as a joke, but many didn't laugh. Critics, players, fans, journalists called it dismissive of women's sports and the athletes who compete at the highest level. Once again, Stephen A. addressed it. He apologized. Not a deflection, an acknowledgement that the timing and tone were off. But even then, the reaction was split. Some demanded deeper reflection. Others said, "That's just Stephen A. Unfiltered, but never cruel." Here's the thing. Controversy doesn't break Stephen A. It defines his edge. He doesn't start drama for clicks, but if his opinion causes one, he's not backing down. And when he's wrong, he says so, loudly, clearly, publicly. Some brands might be cautious around him. In today's ultra-sensitive climate where every sentence gets dissected, Stephen A. walks a fine line. But while others censor themselves to protect endorsements, Stephen A. continues to say what others won't, but what audiences need to hear. In sports, they call him the storm with a mic. In the media world, he's a walking headline. And whether you love him or can't stand him, one thing's certain. When Stephen A. Smith speaks, you listen. Scandals, silence, storms, and soul. Stephen A. Smith's story is about far more than sports. It's about standing tall in the face of backlash, protecting what matters in a world that overshares everything, and knowing that sometimes the loudest voices carry the deepest truths and the biggest risks. If this journey inspired you, moved you, or made you think differently, hit that like button, subscribe, and share this video with someone who needs to hear the real story behind the headlines. Thanks for riding with us.